Good evening, everyone. It's me, Drive Ghost, and welcome back to another episode of Power System Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I believe should never ever be a factor in versus debates, except in a few specific circumstances, that being Toon Force. In this video, I'm going to be explaining what Toon Force is, how it works in versus debates, and why I honestly think it has absolutely no place. So, let's jump right into it. So, first off, what is Toon Force? Toon Force, otherwise known as cartoon physics, is a form of logic and gags often seen in cartoons. Toon Force can include abilities such as virtual invulnerability, pulling objects out of nowhere, also referred to as hammer space or the magic satchel, or otherwise manipulating the environment in impossible ways, and practically any kind of joke or visual gag, seen in cartoons such as Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry, which are some of the most common Toon Force verses. Just think old school cartoons like that. So the first reason that this doesn't have any place in versus debates is that it is a gag, not a power. It's not a proper power system or ability. With the exception of a few characters like Luffy with Gear 5th or whoever wears the mask, no characters should have Toon Force in a versus debate because it's a visual gag for entertainment and humor, rather than an actual ability. This is only the case in verses that have basically every character having Toon Force, with the two aforementioned characters being standouts, as they have Toon Force in verses where it's not common or even accessible for the rest of the verse. And by the way, this isn't including purely visual gags like a character randomly getting a different head shape or things becoming all cartoony and wacky. That's just... if it doesn't have any if it doesn't have any impact on other characters and it's just purely visual, that's not Toon Force, that's just a pure visual gag. So the next point is that Toon Force is inconsistent. Characters with Toon Force are typically believed to be practically invincible, bouncing back from any kind of attack or harm, but even with Toon Force, a lot of cartoon characters have been severely injured or even killed. For example, both Tom and Daffy Duck have died from basic explosions that they've otherwise survived and endured. And in a different example, in Teen Titans Go, I know, don't like having to bring that up, the characters have died several times. Sometimes even from mundane things. Due to its nature as a gag, Toon Force is too inconsistent to be really considered in versus debates. And I know I'm gonna probably get comments about people saying like, oh, but Saitama is a gag character. Yeah, there's a difference. The other people in his verse are not gag characters. It's like with Aurelie. And even then, their gags do have actual impact because there are at least semi-limits to them. I'm not gonna get into the specifics of those characters because that's not who this is about. But anyway, let's continue. Just wanted to bring those guys up because I know it's going to get mentioned or at least thought about. And next is that Toon Force is actually boring in versus debates, which is ironic because Toon Force is a gag for entertainment, but in versus debates it trivializes everything. When taking literally or seriously, Toon Force completely ruins any versus debate. Against the character who doesn't have it, the character who does wins because they basically can't lose. When two characters do have it and face each other, it has to be a stalemate because they can't defeat each other, like in the pick here, Scooby-Doo versus Courage. They both had Toon Force, so it ended in a draw. This trivializes versus debates and makes using cartoon characters like this completely pointless because there's either no winner or there's an obvious winner, so why would you do it? So in conclusion, Toon Force should not be taken seriously in the context of a versus debate. Instead, the respective characters should be judged by actual feats, even if they're inconsistent, because at least then, you're not trying to compare with a random and inconsistent power system. Unless a character actually uses Toon Force in a verse where Toon Force isn't default, such as Gear 5th in One Piece, or The Mask in The Mask, it shouldn't be a factor in versus debates at all. However, this can be tricky with characters like Bugs Bunny or Tom, characters who use Toon Force constantly and thus have inconsistent feats regardless. In which case, they should just have their top feats be compared and treat lesser feats as outliers. That isn't perfect, and it isn't what a lot of people would want to do because it feels disingenuous, or disingenuine, however the fuck you say it. But there's not much else to be done in that context. Because you can't just use Toon Force. Like I've explained, it doesn't work properly. So, unless it's an actual power that gives them Toon Force, and not just cartoon logic at work, it has no place. So, please stop trying to use Toon Force in versus debates, unless it's the situation that I've pointed out several times now. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.